Good? Alright guys, how's everybody doing? My name's Anton. I'm a CEO of Coaching Hub and Human Sustainability and Identity Coach. I'm focused on consulting with my Oak Tree Consulting Company on human sustainability, which I'll get into today. And with Linda, we run Coaching Hub, which is specifically a coaching company. So focusing on human sustainability is something that we need to understand. What is human sustainability? We went green in everything in life except people. We went green in resources, we went green in energy. You know, companies are spending millions and millions of dollars trying to find ways how to preserve our planet. But if you look at history over the last 20 years, the social environment has become more toxic. Our workplaces have become a lot more polluted with stuff. People are way too busy. And the reality is your average engagement within the workplace is down massively compared to what it used to be. People are working more hours, but the output has dropped because of the environment that we created for our organizations. So I want to start out with why am I so passionate about? It starts with my father. My father is my hero, was my hero. He's no longer around. He's been dead for about 23 years. But he worked himself to death. Literally, that's lymphoma is what took him out of this world, but it was his job and his commitment to his people that drove him there. He was a communist version of a mayor, big time city guy, and Gorbachev, if you guys remember him, the guy with with the thing on his head, bald dude. He recognized him in his final address to the Soviet Union for all the contribution he's done to the Communist Party. I'm not an advocate for communism; it doesn't work. Trust me, I know we've tried it. But I do love what my father did. And one of the biggest things that I remember about my father is that his funeral was standing room only. When we lived in these large apartment buildings, you guys call them the projects out here where I come from, that's just the standard of living, that's what we lived in. You know, these humongous 200 units, and you had massive courtyards. And this was he died in 95, so 4 years later after Soviet Union fell apart. You imagine, okay, popular guy, they're going to prepare, brought a bunch of chairs, they thought, all right, we're going to really prepare. Not enough chairs, there was literally standing room only, packed courtyard because these people wanted to come and pay their respects to my father. That's my most vivid childhood memory I have, is a line of people about 2 miles long walking behind his casket because not a lot of people drove in Russia back then, so they had to drive very slow so these people could keep up and walk 2 miles. This thing was 3 miles long distance, but about 2 miles of people walking behind it. And they just wanted to say bye. Why? Because everything he did for him. I remember a vivid memory, we'd go to a farm, and just to say hello, doing the rounds and seeing his people, and we'd leave with a trunk full of stuff, like potatoes, chickens, milk, like you name it, and it was all free. People were like, we love you so much, please take this from us, and if it didn't take it, it'd be a sign of disrespect. We'd go to a fishery and walk out with a 3-liter jug of caviar. Like, that different world, obviously, probably expensive now. But he was taken at 45 years young from lymphoma. And from that point forward, what I started thinking about, what if my dad was still around today? What if he was able to be the man that he was for his people for 40 more years? And what could he have done to get there? What can all of us learn to do better so then we continue to do that? And this is where I coach a lot of mothers. Actually, my predominant client is a female client. Because I was raised by old women after my dad died. I live with old women. Now I have my newborn, but 2 older daughters and my wife. So when I work with them, I want to help them to find ways to keep 10% of themselves for themselves. Because you are all givers. I've met all of you just now, and you all have a purpose. You all have a mission in this world to make positive impact. That's why we came to EmpowerLink, because we want to empower people. We want to be empowered. But what we end up doing is we give ourselves 100% of ourselves away. Because you think that I want to be selfless and I want to just do everything for them. But everybody uses the oxygen mask analogy on the airplane, right? You put your oxygen mask on first. Why? Because if something happened to you, you can't save your kids. You can't do the things to provide for them in that state of emergency. So that's where my 10% analogy comes from. Out of 100 times of whether it be mental capacity, whether it be total time commitment, 10% of that has to be kept for you so you can keep operating at 100% of your capacity within the 90% that you have. And what I think about is just a gas tank, right? Right now, say you have a 5-gallon gas tank that you're all running with, and you're giving 100% of that gas tank away. Pretty soon the gas tank's going to shrink because your capacity for output cannot be sustained. And that's where the concept of human sustainability comes in. How do I keep doing what I'm doing now 40 years from now and actually get better at it because I have better inputs coming in, right? So if you kept 10% for yourself, then that 5-gallon gas tank can stay at 90% capacity for eternity, for however long you're alive. Mathematically speaking, it makes sense. You're talking to people like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But we're not doing it. We're not spending time in gyms. We're not spending time in meditation. Whether you want to go Western medicine, Eastern medicine for stress management, just taking care of our body, we're not spending the time. We're not putting enough in. And I'm coming from a business standpoint. This is not health. This is where we're losing a ton of money because we're not taking care of stress within organizations. And I'll talk about some of these stats in a sec. So who am I? Just a little bit of a background, right? Kind of blurry, apologize. But my mission is to help 10 million people to realize their potential by impacting their mind. You know, I see so much potential in people, and that's why I became a coach and a consultant. I was working in a health and wellness field, managing and stuff, and my people kept coming to me and they say, Anton, you see stuff in us that we don't see in ourselves, and you're trying to push us and get us to that place. And I was like, all right, I like developing people. I like what I'm hearing there. How can I marry the concepts? And that's how I became a coach and fell in love with developing and consulting. This is my family, my 2 little ones, and my tiniest one is 2 months old, so he's not any pictures yet. But we all got baptized about 2 years ago. The Lord is a big part of my life. You know, I coach people that are spiritual and not spiritual. It's not to say, what is your religion? It's, do you have a governing, bylaws that you live by? Whether you're an atheist and you live by a moral code, or you're a Buddhist that, follows that side of religion, just what governs you? What pushes you forward? For me, it's Christ. This is me in the military. It's me running with a guy down over there in the corner. Fell in love with leadership there. Fell in love with developing people. I fell in love with taking charge and being adaptable in the moment. Graduated #1 recruit out of 363 in the Marine Corps boot camp. 2 meritorious promotions, many boards I won. I just fell in love with leadership. But then I realized that it wasn't enough. I wanted to go bigger. I wasn't making enough impact in the military. I was doing it because I wanted to pay my debt to this country. I'm a first generation foreigner from Russia, so I moved here in '99, and when I moved here, I was thinking, I want to give back. This place has given me so much. I mean, if any of you are immigrants, the American dream is still very much alive within so many immigrant hearts. You come over here and you start realizing how easy, and I don't want to say easy like that, but still in comparison, how easy it is to succeed in America compared to, say, where I come from, compared to where some people come from. So to pay my debt, I wanted to serve, and I went to Iraq, I went to Japan, did a couple tours. One was fun, one was not so much. But it was all good. Now this is just my life, that's my kids, and this is me professionally, right? Before I had the longer hair and looked more like a polished up individual. I'll get into why my hair is long when I talk tonight about identity coaching, but that's what I used to be, very buttoned up and very professional, and then I realized that was not me either. I can't make as much impact working for somebody else because I'm delivering somebody else's mission, I'm delivering somebody else's vision. And I think in order to achieve mastery in life, you have to veer off at some point. You can only follow somebody else's path for so long until, just like an apprentice, takes their skills and makes them their own. It brings in their own flavor, their own experience. So that's what I'm doing now. So some stats. State of a workplace environment. This one is the one that I probably focus on the most with organizations. We're losing $300 billion a year in US alone because we're not handling organizational stress properly. That figure is astronomical. When you come to a company and you say that, like, oh my God, yes, but they don't change. Why? We don't change as human beings. Why? Because it's too far away. That number is too far away. We think it's a global number. It's not something that's tangible that we can feel. But when I tell you your health is being impacted, I can tell you exactly how your health is being impacted. Okay, it's closer to home. If I can quantify for you what your turnover is costing you, what your new employee acquisition is costing you, what your productivity drop from stress is costing you, and say, you know what, this is the dollar amount for your organization. Now it's like, oh my God, all right, I want to fix this. So that's why some of these figures are too big. We have to get into individual companies, sit down and assess, what is this actual cost? The reality is, when you invest in human sustainability, your return is anywhere from $3 to $5 per dollar invested. What the problem is, though, majority of these dollars right now are being spent on wellness programs. That's where organizations are going in, and they're throwing really just mud at the wall and seeing what stick. Because I've been in health and wellness for 10 years in a very high level, and I see that, I've seen it live. A person comes into a gym that is subsidized by organization, and they have to make, say, 8 appearances a month. Otherwise, they have to pay full price. It's done a lot in Vegas. The Wynn company, he pays for all their gym memberships. So what do? They come in, swipe their card, walk around, and walk out. Did they actually get healthier? Did they actually improve? Did that organization actually get any sort of money back for their investment? Absolutely not. But on the surface, it looks like it's happening. It looks like people are getting better. But statistically speaking, it actually doesn't work. Wellness programs are broken, they're outdated, and need to be changed. So 1 in 5 Americans say tech is a major source of stress. I think that number is significantly higher. I just think a lot of people don't understand tech stress enough to use that as a reason for why they feel what they feel. I would say 3 to 5 is from my personal experience. It's probably 3 out of 5 that actually feel that. 43% of Americans identify as a constant checkers. I would say in this room alone, there's probably 75 plus. And what I mean by constant checkers, ever have that feeling in your pocket that your phone's vibrating and your phone's not even in your pocket? Yeah, that's actually a psychological syndrome that is happening in our everyday life where we feel like somebody's calling us, there's a notification, right? This happening all the time wears your body out. It hurts you in such levels you may not even understand. If your body gets a fix, and I mean that in dopamine, right? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that makes us feel good. If your body can get as good of a fix from picking up a phone and getting it lit up as it does from a working out that requires an hour of your time, what your body's thinking about is going, you know what? I'm going to compare my work to my outcome. Dopamine, that's what it does. And it's what people don't understand. Motivation is chemical. It's not a psychological thing. It's first a chemical that gets interpreted into a psychological thought that we act on to create an action. So your body thinks, all right, you're wanting me to go work out. What is the amount of work that I have to put in order to get this reward of how I feel? Okay, X amount. But when I pull this out, the amount of work is so significantly less, and I get the pleasure of somebody liking my post or somebody emailing me, somebody saying good job, that I really don't want to go work out now because I can just do this all day and I get the same pleasure on the surface, but it just burns your receptors out and eventually it doesn't even work anymore. And your body's just overall feeling down and low and people are becoming depressed and everybody's blaming everything but what it is, stress. Stress is causing people to become depressed. Stress is causing poor digestion, which over the last 25 years, guys, we've increased our antidepressant prescription by 400%. That's insane. Now, here's something to think about, right? Tell me one person with an antidepressant prescription that doesn't struggle with depression. I'll wait. It doesn't happen because it's an ongoing process. The drugs don't fix the problem. They kind of help to alleviate some of the symptoms. But then you have to modify dosages. You have to change things to keep the same effect because you're just fooling your body. And in order to keep tricking your body, you kind of find new tricks. And eventually even that stops running out. So we got to address the root cause. 58% of Americans say work is a significant source of stress. Once again, I say that number is even higher now. And then main sources, right? Workload, 36%. People issues, 31%. Work-life balance, 20%. And job security is 8%, right? So workload now is probably even higher. These stats are from 2017. I would say 2 years later, these numbers are growing faster than we can keep up. So a little bit getting into stress. I talked about stress management probably for about 10 years now. And most people think of stress as in their mind. That's the most common stress, and it's also the most noticeable stress. But that's not the only one. So what I want you to think about when it comes down to managing stress, it's like a bucket analogy, right? You have stress coming in, which is water being poured into that bucket. You have stress coming out, things that you can do yourself to help your body handle stress. And that's taking the water out. Then inside the bucket, you have your adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are a tiny little gland that sits on, or two of them, that sit on top of your kidneys. And they regulate one of the master hormones in your body, cortisol. When that thing is out of whack, everything is out of whack. Because your body uses the same building blocks to build stress response as it uses to build sex hormones, as it uses to build neural hormones, focus, and all those things. So imagine you have 10 building blocks to go around. And it used to be 3 for sex hormones, 3 for neural hormones, and 4 for stress hormones. But now we go under massive stress, and all of a sudden it becomes 8 for stress, 1 for neural, and 1 for your sex hormones. Your libido's down, your drive to live is down, your focus, your memory, all those things are going to be impacted. And many of you are business professionals sitting there, you can't afford to slow down your brain by a multi-millisecond. Because those reactions happen so much throughout the day, when you actually add all that up, you're losing way more time than you would lose if you actually implemented stress management techniques. And that's why I try to focus with people on input. So I don't say, not just backing off. Some of you are entrepreneurs, some of you are entrepreneurs with a side hustle. Some of you are with 2 different side hustles, right? So you can't just say back off and breathe and relax like a lot of typical stress management people do. That's the Eastern side. Great, use that. But if you can't, there's other things you can do. You can do like what I focus on is like an expedited stress recovery, where you do flotation tanks as an example. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of float spas, but that's something that's coming out. They make these little tanks, maybe about from me to about the wall, so about 5 feet, maybe 6 feet, and about 3 feet wide. They fill it up with about this much water, and they put 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt into it. So the buoyancy becomes so high that you don't actually sink. So they close the chamber, there's no sound, there's no light, and you just lay there for an hour. What's crazy is that when you get out of it, you feel like you got a deep tissue massage, but nobody ever touched you. Because your body absorbs so much magnesium through your skin, and that helps you become more parasympathetic, makes you relaxed. My wife, she's not comfortable with people touching her, so for her, that's the best way to actually relax. But there's so many different things that you can do. Cryotherapy, cold hot therapy, hot saunas. Most people, when you manage stress, what would you guys do? What would you do to manage stress if you were to do it yourself? There's one very common one where everybody goes to. What do you do to manage stress?
Well, breathing and exercising.
Okay, last one. There it is. I figured, yep.
Music and meditation.
I love that one. That's a really good one, especially music. Music's really good. But the exercising one is what I was looking for. Because most people think, I'm going to go for a run, and executives are so guilty of this. I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to clear my head, I'm going to de-stress, right? So what happens though, when you exercise for 40 minutes or greater with sustained heart rate, your body doesn't know the difference between exercising and running away from a lion. There's no difference. So your body's thinking, I'm fight or flight, I'm running away from a lion. So here you are, you cleared your head, you took care of mental stress, but you just created physical stress in your body. And this one is going to outweigh this one, and you actually hurt yourself in the long run, even though physically in your head you feel better. But it's that silent killer that I'm going to talk about. So the three main type of stress is mental stress. You're all aware of it. You all have it. You all experience it daily. Kids, work, life, finances, doesn't matter. Traffic. That one is kind of like, all right, I can feel it, I can experience it, and then if I feel it, I at least do something about it. The oxidative stress is going to be pollution, toxicity, women makeups you guys use and things like that, medications, putting that stuff in our body just doesn't belong there, right? But we don't think that that actually causes stress, but it absolutely does. And that's why it's scary, because it's hidden. We don't think it's happening. And then you feel like, okay, I feel stressed, but I don't really have a lot on my plate mentally. What is going on? Could be your digestion. All that could be causing your stress response because your body's not absorbing nutrients properly. Then you get into physical stress, which is usually like over schedules or sleeping. Who here gets 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night, uninterrupted? You see the problem where two people just raise their hand out of this whole group. That's an issue, guys, because we justify in our head, oh, I'm fine and my energy's fine. You're judging it in the moment, but when I talk about disease model in a second, you're going to see the problem that's going to come from this today, it's not going to come to tomorrow. It's going to come 5 to 15 years later. So, and then you're just not going to blame that. We don't blame that for something that we did 5 to 15 years ago. We think it's the current moment that's causing it. Stress issues don't come overnight. There's something that's just like a small little paper cut that just keeps slicing and slicing and slicing until it becomes a really big bleeding wound. Then we have what you could do, right? You could focus on nutrition, eating right. One of the biggest things that I tell people about nutrition is blood sugar regulation. If your blood sugar is going like this all day long, you're going to have a stress problem. You're going to have a hormonal problem. When your blood sugar crashes, your body's trying to get more stress response to get more insulin to get more energy. So dumping that fight or flight hormone back into the system the same way as mental stress would, right? It doesn't matter chemically where it came from. It's the same physiological response that occurs. Then you have your exercise, and that's what I was talking about. Even though it is a form of release of stress, it has to be specific to the type of stress you're experiencing. The timing has to be proper, and the exercise type has to be proper. So here's an example. Resistance training is not the most popular form of exercise. It requires a little bit more depth of knowledge than just getting on a treadmill and going for a run. But it's way less stressful on the body. The beating is not as bad. Yes, you get a little sore, but when you get used to it, it's not so bad. And you give your body breaks, because when you do resistance training, you do a few repetitions, you set it down, you rest, you pick it up, you do it again. But every time your heart rate comes back down. So your body doesn't feel like something's chasing it the whole time. But when you go for cardio and you do a run, it's sustained heart rate, so the body feels that lion has been coming after it. So timing. If you have stress, say you're a night owl and you have a hard time falling asleep, and you're exercising at night, that's a no-no, because once again, you're already high with stress response, Adding that exercise is putting you even higher. Now you're coming in, going to lay down, body should be tired and going to sleep, but the brain won't shut up. It's thinking about what's to come, what happened that day, what's coming up tomorrow, and that's all because we revved it up more. Now, vice versa, most likely if you're high at night, you're going to be low in the morning, waking up tired. Even if you slept a long time, you just don't have good energy. That is when you need to work out, because you need to signal to your system that, hey, it's time to get going. Let's wake up and get it rocking, because we're a hunting and gathering society. You're supposed to wake up high energy in the morning. Day progresses, gradually come down. When that doesn't happen, that's your first sign. So if you're not falling asleep within 5 minutes at night, that's not normal. Something that I need you guys to understand. Common does not equal normal. I'll say that again. Common does not equal normal. If everybody's jumping off a bridge, does that mean normal? No, it's not. It just means that a bunch of people became stupid and not paying attention to what's going on in life, right? So just because majority of America is taking longer than 5 minutes to fall asleep does not mean that that's what we should be focused on. That doesn't mean that we should accept that as an acceptable answer. We have to fix it. And then relationships. Mindfulness and relationship. Mindfulness is something that we think about as meditation, right? We think about this deep-rooted Eastern medicine practice. Mindfulness can be eating your food. When was the last time you ate and you just ate? You weren't on your phone, you weren't thinking about meetings, you weren't thinking about all the other stuff. You actually sat and enjoyed your food. You actually chewed your food enough time to create the first level of breakdown that your body's going to be assisting with your digestion. Probably not very often. If you're like just like everybody else, including myself, we're using that time almost like, just give me an IV, I'd rather just take it in, and then as long as I have my nutrients, I'm good, right? But we can slow down in those moments and create moments of mindfulness without adding things into our schedule. You know, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you're going to see Anton Chumak-Andrikov, input coach. What the heck does that mean? What is an input coach? I work with people inputs. I don't say we're going to cut something out. We're going to bury it. We're going to do something that you're already doing slightly different to help you achieve better stress response, to help you achieve better physiology levels. Then relationships, right? Support system. This is where you need a support system. You got to have a community around. You know, and that's what EmpowerLink is all about. It's about bringing the community together that can help each other grow. You know, Corey, Marius, you know, so many great people got involved in this, and these guys are always doing it. You know, they're not posting content about themselves. They're talking about the community. They're talking about highlighting other people. You know, IS3 is putting together and highlighting these businesses. It's amazing, guys, but you need that in your back pocket. You need that to fall back on. Otherwise, stress will eat you alive. This world is not meant to be lived alone. We are community creatures. We're not meant to be sole survivors. So in here in the bucket, you know, to finish it up, adrenal glands, right? My analogy of that, they're like a guy in a boat that has a hole in it. And that water is slowly seeping in, and that guy is just trying to dump it out all the time. The other component of stress management is how well we're supporting that guy in a boat. How well are we supporting those adrenal glands inside your body? And that can be done through supplementation, where you take roots and different adaptogens that help to heal them, help to give them the nutrients they need to perform at an optimized level. It's kind of like giving performance enhancement drugs to an athlete to make sure that he can perform at the peak level, right? But on a legal and a healthy way. So one thing to ask yourself, how big is your bucket capacity? Yep.
When you talk about, do you ever think about how to drill a hole at the bottom for just a perpetual release? Are you getting into some of that, or is that a weird analogy?
Well, there's already a hole. The problem, what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the water from overflowing. I'm trying to give the guy in the boat a bigger bucket to dump it out. So I'm just trying to work on either how fast that little guy is working or how big of a bucket is to carry on your analogy. But yeah, that's what it's about. It's about figuring out ways how we can keep the water from overflowing even while the water's coming in hard, right? Yeah. Great question. But how big is your bucket analogy or capacity? You may have a huge bucket, you may have a little bucket. You know, I look at CEOs and CFOs of Fortune 500 companies, and I say that part of the reason they were able to get there is because they have a really big bucket. They run on high levels of stress, day to day, it doesn't matter, because they're always up here. But it doesn't overwhelm them. But don't get me wrong, it eventually catches up to them too. You see how many of them fall off, have to retire earlier and all this kind of stuff, have mental breakdowns, because even they get caught up eventually. But some of us, we have a day of stress and we're like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, right? You don't know. There's no way to measure. There's not a scientific thing that's gonna say, you can handle X amount of stress. Like there's nothing to figure it out. You can just tell by yourself, but it's all just a guess in a ballpark. Oops. Click happy. All right, disease model, like I told you I was going to talk about it. So 5 to 15 years, optimal health. What should we have with optimal health? Lean body composition, no symptoms. And I mean by lean body composition is it shouldn't be hard to maintain your weight. It's the reality. Because the thing is, we say, well, I'm a horrible eater. But what you don't understand is that the stress response within your body is causing you to crave certain things. There's a reason what we call comfort foods. Your body wants that sugar. When you're revved up with stress response, chemically, your body wants a simple energy source. Because a fat is very complex. When you look at a fat structure, right, chemically, it's got a bunch of different bonds. It's a really big molecule. Body's like, you know what? That's going to take me a really long time to use. Sugar molecule is a chain molecule. You got a few bonds to break and quick release of energy occurs. So when you have a line in front of your face, which one do you think the body's going to want to use? The immediate stuff. Because we're so limited with how much of that we can store, we can maybe run 2 hours on sugar total. We deplete it very fast, and then the craving comes in and says, give me more sugar, because I have to respond to this line that's in front of me right now. Right? So it's a physiological thing that's telling you, I need more sugar. And we're addicted, guys. We are such a sugar-addicted civilization. The crazy stat is that sugar is, it depends who you talk to, anywhere from 1 to 1 or 3 times as more addictive as cocaine. That's crazy, right? You think cocaine's horrible, what an addictive drug, but sugar is as bad, if not worse. Here's the problem, though. You can go to anywhere around here and gain as much sugar as you can. Cocaine is a little bit harder to obtain, right? It's a little bit more tough. There's a natural there's a natural block within society to get you from obtaining cocaine. There's not that negative connotation of sugar, but it's just as damaging and just as bad. When you compare brain scans, same pleasure centers light up. So then you get into imbalanced physiology, and then it gets into out of range lab markers. Something to understand when you go to a doctor, right? Americans, we think if my doctor told me my levels are not bad, I'm okay. What does okay mean? Okay is such a broad statement. The question you should be asking, am I optimal? And there's quite a bit of a difference between being optimal to where you're operating at the best level chemically to be able to as good in your mind as you possibly can, and good enough. Big, big difference, right? You know when your company and your business is running optimally versus when they're running just good enough. But what happens is you go to, where is the data for these ranges collected? Hospitals. Do healthy people go to hospitals? No. Why would they? It doesn't make sense. So here's problem number 1. Our data sample is already bad because we're collecting the norms from sick people. So we're deriving a norm as a sick population norm. So what actually happens is they take all this data, millions and millions of data sources, and they find a mean. And then they go 2 standard deviations away from that mean to say everybody underneath this umbrella is going to be considered healthy. What actually they're saying is everybody in this umbrella is not diseased. That's a big difference between being healthy and being diseased. The reality of the situation is that it's encompassing 95% of people. It's saying that 95% of people out there are healthy. Does it look like 95% of people out there are healthy? Absolutely not. It's 95% of the population is not diseased. So what this is talking about, until maybe year 10, your lab markers are not going to go out of whack. So you're going to be 10 years into this hole that you're digging for yourself until you're actually going to realize medically that, hey, doctor's saying I got to do something about it, right? So from there, you're going to have increased fat, decreased muscle, and some combination of symptoms, irritability. Guys, that's one of the things that stress will do to you. You're going to notice yourself on edge and irritable. I quit my job about 3 weeks ago to focus on my company full time. I have a 2-month-old newborn. My house went on the market last week, and I was doing a remodel for 6 months myself. So lots of stuff going on amongst many other things going on. Stressed. I noticed myself becoming irritable. I noticed myself doing these things. But because I can explain it through physiology, this is the conversation I'm having with my wife. Babe, I'm sorry. Here's how I'm feeling. This is what I need from you. And just, let's work together. Let's get through it. I need that support. I need that relationship in my life to help me through it. Then from there is when you finally become diseased. You have multiple symptoms. You have excess fat, decreased strength, overt dysfunction, one or multiple diagnoses, reliance on medication, and frequent doctor visits. This is so much more expensive than being here and investing a little bit in stress management. Whether you want to get a coach, whether you want to get a gym membership and figure out what the right way for working out for you, better yet, go to a yoga studio, or you just want to invest into some education for yourself. It's going to cost you a whole lot less now than it will when the problem becomes bad. And it's not an if. In our situation, in our society, you will at one point or another have either anxiety, depression, nervous breakdowns, all the other things that can come from stress. It's going to happen. So avoid it by doing something about it. Now, what do you do about it, right? This is kind of 3 pillars of health. Most people, when they think about health, majority of the world thinks about here, the disease model. That's the Western medicine side of things. You're going to have issues, and think about it like a tree. Each leaf represents a symptom, pain, nausea, whatever it could be. Your doctor is trying to make you feel better. And Western medicine is important. I'm not one of those people that says, oh my God, don't take pills. Because guess what? There comes a time where pills are the only way you can get by. But they're just addressing one at a time and knocking the symptoms off. They keep happening, they keep, something else keeps coming up, and before you know it, you're taking 5 medications because the 4 are basically to overcome the side effects of the first one you started with, right? And then some of these medications, I laugh because it's sad, but you read you see the commercial and then you see like the fine print, may kill you, or I'm taking a headache but it may cause uncontrollable diarrhea. I'm like, no, I don't want that. Like, I'll take the headache. But so what do we got to do? Then you have kind of like the tree stump that's above ground and kind of the main part of the tree. That's going to be your naturopathic medicine. That's going to be people that are not just going to look at a standalone thing. They're going to look at how does the entire body correlate? How does the entire endocrine system work? Because say you have a testosterone imbalance, right? If you're a male, very common, stress kills testosterone. And if you're over 35, you already have a problem. If you're over 35 and you have girls as kids, bigger problem. So because of that, people are going to look at testosterone and say, as long as you're between 250 and 1,000, huge range, you're fine. Well, define fine again. All it means is a doctor can't give you testosterone replacement therapy until you go below 250. Well, the thing is, if you're not at 500 or higher, it's impacting your will to live. That's what testosterone does for a male. That enjoyment to be able to do the things you love to do. And that, I don't want to say aggression because that's a very strong word, but drive, the overall drive to push forward and persevere. That's being hindered, and you still have 250 more points to drop before a doctor's going to give you a shot or a cream or whatever it may be. So the naturopaths will look at how does estrogen compare to testosterone? Because your estrogen value could be within range but be borderline high. Your testosterone value could be within range but borderline low. But the ratio between is so far that you have a testosterone deficiency symptoms because of the ratio, even though individually it's where it's at. I don't want to bore you with too much science, but the point is you have to look at a bigger picture than what Western medicine does. Now, this has all come above ground now. That's all surfaced into an actual problem. But it all started in the root causes. It all started down here, which is what I focus a lot on when I do identity coaching. I will say that you can't be the best version of yourself here until you're the best version of yourself inside. Until your blood and brain chemistry is where it should be, you're just a response to a chemical. Then you're a thought. So if those chemicals are off, you're already working against the grain. So we're going to address things like digestion, nutrition, stress management, all those kind of components that are the root causes of all of our life problems. When you fix the root cause, everything above it gets better. Versus starting to knock out one thing at a time and taking forever, you start at the bottom and work your way up. Any questions on this specific stuff, like disease model and why we are the way that we are? Nope. Just understand, we're disconnected. I talked to a psychologist about it. If you, especially like if you're older, or if you remember, your grandparents, how often did they used to talk about, don't do this, you can have a cholesterol problem. Don't do this, you can have a health problem. Who talks like that anymore? Nobody. We don't talk about the things that we're doing now. Live in the moment. Be present. I get it, guys. I'm all about that. But the things that you do today are going to cause you problems later. That's just life. We need to understand that and not be disconnected from our future selves. All right. So organizational impact. Disengage employees. It's one of the things that, I forget the stat, I want to say that 2.5 hours, what I remember, out of an 8-hour workday that our employees are actually engaged. And that's like in a good company. So many of our people are just checking boxes. They're showing up, they're there, but their output is so much less than what it possibly could be. Stress is causing a lot of this to happen. High turnover. Most companies know exactly what it costs to acquire a team member. Company that I came from, $25,000 is a typical acquisition cost between development, first 6 months onboarding, and things like that. If you're bleeding, I took over this, one of the clubs I took over had 137% turnover. That means that more than the entire team turned over by the time that the year was finished. You can, so a 43% staff multiplied it to $25,000, right? Quite a big number. When I took over, I took it from 137 to 40%. And you can understand the cost savings. You know what I did? What I'll talk about when I talk about organizational responsibility. Those are the things that I did. It's not complex. It's just, you have to understand that science and business are not one and the same. What science is saying, business is not following. And we're just not caught up. Our motivation is off. Our management techniques are off. Our scheduling techniques are off. Because we're using what's been done in the past. It's been done this way, it works this way, we're going to keep doing it this way. No, we need to change. We need to evolve. Low productivity, right? People's just total output drops. It's not just talking about how engaged they are. They may be even trying, but that bucket capacity shrunk. They used to run a 5-gallon tank, but now they're down to a gallon. They're still trying at 100%, but their total output is just not as high because they just don't feel good. And then low talent pool. If you become that kind of organization, you think you're going to attract high-level talent? No, because high-level talent is not going to come to you, and high-level talent is going to leave you because all of a sudden entrepreneurship looks really good. Or running my own thing, if I'm working for a small company, is looking really good because I get to control my own environment. Feeling uncontrolled, feeling like you have no ability to move forward yourself is one of the leading causes of stress within the workplace. Feeling like I am not in control of my promotions, I'm not in control of the way I'm being viewed. And that's very common in our organizations right now. So, personal responsibility. I don't want to put everything in organizations because that's what we like to do. We like to blame the big brother, or whatever, the government, the organizations, and corporations. But the reality is we are the ones that are allowing this to happen. We're all the ones that can make something happen, and we don't need somebody to redo how they do everything. We need to redo how we do something. So proper sleep hygiene. We started talking about 7 to 8 hours of sleep, right? So if you're not getting that, find a way to do it. I'm telling you. Why? Because you don't have a contrast. One of my favorite things to tell people if we're trying to convince you to do something, contrast. How do you know if it's worth it if you don't even remember what it feels like? How do you know what optimal is and why you need to meditate 20 minutes a day to get there if you've never done it? If you haven't felt that feeling. Once you get there, you're like, I'm sold. It's so funny because I do these 30-day challenges with people. I'm like, don't tell me anything. Give me 30 days of doing this one thing. It can be changing your breakfast. I'm going to force you, we've worked on this, I'm going to force you to eat breakfast that's protein-based and fat-based in the mornings for 30 days straight. And then tell me all the things you're going to record how you feel. When you look back, you go, oh my God, I cannot believe such a small change made so much impact for me throughout the day. But then you're sold on it, and it becomes a lot more worth it, right? Body's considering, what are you making me do? How much work is it going to be? And what is it going to get me? If I don't know what it's going to get me, and I know the value, I don't have the motivation to do it. So 30 days. Meditate for 30 days, whatever it is. Proper sleep hygiene, biggest thing I would give you as an advice is look up just resources on sleep hygiene at night. Dim your lights about an hour before you go to bed. White light is basically telling your body that it's still sunlight out. So melatonin, what's supposed to help us fall asleep, is not kicking in. Your body's thinking it's time to be awake and doing stuff. So that's going to throw you off. Technology. If you're going to have technology, which I would say for the last hour, don't. Better read or something like that. But iPhones, and there's apps that make red screens. I don't have my iPhone on me, but if you triple click on my iPhone, it turns into a very red screen. So that it doesn't impact my light and my absorption of that light as much. Allows me to fall asleep better even though I'm doing it. Now, it's still a stimulant for me because I'm using technology, it's still going to hurt me. So I usually stop an hour before. I dim my lights about 2 hours before, and then technology no more for the last hour. Usually meditate, spend time with my wife a little bit, catch up, and things like that. So compete with yourself. One of the biggest reasons we get stressed is because we're always comparing apples to oranges. We want to be an orange, but we're an apple. And we try to be the best orange we can be, but we can't be an orange because we're an apple. So or vice versa, right? So you need to compete with yourself. I'm not telling you not to be competitive. You need to want to improve. You need to want to grow. That should be part of who we are. But if you're trying to compete by being better than somebody else all the time, somebody's going to have a bigger house, somebody's going to have a better job, somebody's going to have better output, somebody's going to have whatever, more recognition. Can you just be better tomorrow than you were yesterday? Just a little bit better, one step closer. And that's what's important. The external competition is what drives so much stress for us. Combine Eastern and Western stress management techniques, right? Explore. If for you right now meditation is voodoo science, okay, don't start with meditation. Start with cryotherapy. There's cryotherapy clinics popping up all over the place. You get into this cold tank. If that's not good enough, if that's too much crazy for you, start cold showers. And yes, it's uncomfortable, you get used to it, but cold showers can be a great stress management technique, that cold hot therapy. If that's even too much for you, go into dry sauna post-workout for about 10 to 15 minutes and then do a cold plunge after that. You have a pool that's pretty cold next to the sauna, and I sit for about 20 minutes, I sweat for when all toxicity comes out, but also my body gets to this very sympathetic nervous system place. I'm like, oh my God, let me out of this thing. And then as soon as I jump into a cold pool, it's like, you just relax, instantly feel rejuvenated and feel good. And that's because your stress response comes down. It's a good thing to do post-workout. The power of no. Probably the biggest thing for stress response as far as what we can control. We can't say no. We've become so bad at saying no as a society. We've become a society of people pleasers. And we're not focused on ourselves. We're so concerned with what people are going to think about us that I want to say yes to everything that comes in front of me. And then you become so burnt out that you can't be effective in anything. You're doing 50% or less performance work in everything that you're doing versus saying no to the majority of things. I forget who said it, I think it was Warren Buffett that talks about, he says no to 99% of things that come in front of him to do the 1% that's meant for him. Warren Buffett's accomplished a lot of stuff, guys. I mean, we should probably listen to somebody like that. I believe he didn't even start his wealth until his 50s. So it's one of those things that all these people say that, but we don't apply it. It's too far away from us. We're not connected to that. But when you actually start doing it, and that's why I coach in identity coaching, when you start saying no to things that are not meant for you, you start shining so bright that those things that are meant for you just keep flooding in. And you just feel like, oh my God, the doors have just opened up. I see this on LinkedIn a lot. People are like, they start figuring out what they actually want, and all of a sudden, opportunities are everywhere. They've always been there. The opportunities didn't just come. You're just starting to look at things better. You're starting to see and not being bogged down by all the minutiae of stuff that you're saying yes to. And then set your identity. In order to do really these, this is important. You can't say no to things until you're firm in what you want and who you are. Until you truly believe in yourself. And I'm not talking about just a psychological thing. This is physiological, this is spiritual, this is financial. I'll talk about that tonight. But it's incredibly important. Once you do that, saying no becomes simple because you know that your vision, your purpose is so much greater than the stuff that's in front of you. You know, it's one of the things that I teach people, purpose over position. It doesn't matter what title you're holding, it doesn't matter what people are thinking of you. Is your purpose is coming into fruition? Yes, great, and you're doing the right thing. All right, last thing. Should really get better at this. Organization responsibility, right? Better management techniques. This is we're so old school. It's so input based. We need to switch to outcome based leadership. Where I had a boss come in, it was probably my favorite boss, and he goes, Anton, how do you want to be led? I was like, never been asked that question before. And I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Tell me what you want, tell me the final outcome, and then get out of my way. He just looked at me and was like, really? Like, yeah, that's it. If you really want to lead me a proper way, and then I'll come to you if I need questions. I'll come to you if I need support. That's how I like to be led. And sure enough, because I had the freedom to navigate, guess what it's doing? It's accomplishing one of the most intrinsic motivation components, and it's autonomy. If you take autonomy from a person, you're going to lose the biggest motivator we have physiologically. It's a human nature thing to want to do things our way. So you got to give that freedom. What are the other two components? Mastery and purpose. We've really gotten purpose heavy. That's something that society's kind of figured out, putting purpose into management, delivering, visions, building vision boards, and whatever it may be. But the mastery and autonomy components are not as present. People are not grasping that. But it's very important. It's something that science has talked about this. If you guys follow Daniel Pink, he's a great, great author, and he talks a lot about these things. And he talks about the candle analogy. They did this study back, I think it was like 68, and they took a box of tacks, they took a candle, and they said, what I want you to do is I want you to find a way to attach this candle to the wall to where it doesn't drip on the ground. So people are trying to melt it, do all sorts of things, blah, blah, blah. And the way they set it up, one was in a pressure environment and one was not. The one that wasn't in a pressure environment was able to think outside the box, and they saw the box of tacks as not just the vessel for the tacks, they saw it as a candle holder that could be attached into the wall with the tacks, right? And then it holds the candle up. But the people that were in a stressed environment, they were so in tunnel vision, they only saw it as a container for those tacks. So they were trying to figure out alternative ways and it wouldn't work. How many of you are in a creative environment? How many of you are not working in a factory anymore where everything is just put things together? So stick and carrot motivation that most organizations use right now is ineffective. That was developed for industrial age. That was developed for when we had a factory production. You didn't have to think outside the box and you just had to work fast. Those reward systems work. But when you start to use those reward systems in a creative environment, you actually diminish performance. This is why I say don't give your kids allowance for chores. Have your kids do chores and give your kids allowance for two separate reasons. Allowance is to teach you to have money. Chores is to teach you to provide for the family, support the family, do your part. But if you start putting monetization on something they should be doing, guess what's going to happen? It's going to require more and more money to accomplish the same task. The same things happen in organizations. The bonuses, the little money that we dangle, it takes more and more and more to elicit the same response. It's not sustainable. We cannot operate like that long term. Then we got to get into reduce the comparison culture. I do a lot of sales work. I've been in sales for many years, so I love working with salespeople. And because in them, it's probably one of the most important places to be a good listener. But if you're stressed out, you can't listen. You're so thinking about what you have to say next you're not going to be a good salesperson. You're missing so much stuff that's not being said because you're not picking up on the cues of the person because you're inside the box. So that's so important. Highly effective schedules. That's something that I've used in many years. Some maybe call it block schedules and stuff like that. But what I say is, me and Linda were working on this. How many time blocks do you have to accomplish something, right? You have 40 blocks in a week. You can't have 41 things that go into 40 blocks. So that's where we have to have it set up that way so when your boss comes to you and says, here's what I need from you, or you're coming to an employee and saying, here's what I need. If they're already full, you either need to take something out and replace it or provide assistance for them elsewhere to make something easier. But that's not what we're doing. We just keep throwing things in there, and that's where all the stress is coming through. The workload, you guys saw, 36%, that was number one. That's where that's coming from. So how can an employee say, no, they can't? But if now you've set it up for them that way, and you said, here's your highly effective schedule, here's your block system, tell me when it's too full, and then let's figure out an alternative, how we can move forward, whether we take it off or we help you out. Proper pay. Pay is probably one of the biggest things that is the reason why people are very stressed at work in some of the lower demographics. But what we're saving in pay, what we're saving in cost there, is costing us productivity, it's costing us turnover, it's costing us low talent pools and things like that. There's research that's saying now that layoffs of proper pay and low pay, they're cost ineffective. With layoffs as an example, what do you end up doing? Most of those people end up getting rehired as consultants. Because you do this massive layoff and you realize you still need their skill set. We weren't planning for this, we weren't developed enough to have to backfill all these people, to replace these people, and now we lost the skill set that's necessary to our organization. So now I gotta pay this person more. Now I'm also having to develop somebody else in the future. I'm wasting time. And what ends up happening, if they've done research, companies that do layoffs do not get better stock market performance. Either stays flat or drops. Isn't that why most companies do layoffs, to get a better stock market performance? But nobody's really paying attention. It's what logically feels good, but it's not what's actually coming out statistically. And then bottom-up culture. Bottom-up culture is something that some great companies have implemented. You know, we as CEOs like to think we know everything because we started from the bottom, we made our way up, and everything's good. We know our business in and out. When was the last time you as a CEO were in front of a problem? Not very often. You're not problem-facing. You're customer-facing most of the time. Who is? Your front line. Those people should be the people that are used to develop solutions. Those people are the ones that should be creating input on how we move forward. But most people don't do it that way. It all flows from the top down. It's a top-down culture, not a bottom-up culture, right? So that's a much better way to perform. All right, guys, so that's about all I got, almost on perfect timing. I just want to open it up, guys. Any questions? I talk fast because I have so much to cover. It's really passionate topic for me. That's just how I am. You know, people like slow down. Like, no, that's just how I am. Learn to keep up. But what questions do you guys have?
I have a comment. You know, when you talk about the just putting more and more things on people's plates and not taking anything away, the other victim in that scenario is innovation. Because you're not going to get anything new unless you give people the time to work on things in a new way. Or, you know, like for example, you know, at Google they give you 20% of your time to work on your problem that you want to solve. I mean, I think that's.
But 50% of their innovation comes from that time. That's I'm glad you brought that up. It's a statistic that's known about Google. They give their employees 20% to do whatever they want. You can work on any project, but over 50% of their new stuff comes from that 20% of time. You see how that varies, right? I'm only giving you 20% investment, but I'm getting 50% back for that 20%. It makes perfect sense. There's so many companies. Netflix is another company that does a lot of similar things like that. The other thing, there's companies out there who publicly say we will not fire people. They just won't do it because of things like that. They don't want people to worry about being innovators. They don't want them to worry about taking initiative. Because a lot of times people keep their head down thinking like if I poke my head too high, it's going to get chopped off. So they're just operating like this the whole time, right? That's an awesome comment.
Yeah, and actually I have one thing, just really quickly. USA Today had a story yesterday about teen suicide rates up to 52%. It's up 52%, which is incredible. Which I think is technology.
Big time.
Is like
social media is really hurt.
When you put that stat up, I think it's even higher than 3. I think it's more like 4 point something. But we just don't.
We can't attribute. We don't know how to quantify things very well, so we end up losing a lot of these statistics. But you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of it has to do with nutrition, and a lot of it has to do with technology. The combination of those two things is really impacting because our kids are on a standard American diet, which is all processed.
Right.
It's what's easy for parents to cook up, and kids get that option. So now they're used to eating chicken nuggets versus having to, eat a real chicken.
Right.
which is, we know chicken nuggets are not real chicken. Yep.
Plus, I would say that I have a 17-year-old daughter who experiences the amount of high stress, and I see them, energy drinks, caffeine, not exercising maybe properly, trying to put so many things in, balance school, the society pressures from social media, the relationships that they fail to have sometimes, or don't know how to have because their brain isn't developed enough to be able to do that. So they need us to guide them as parents.
Well, growing up, for all of us, what was our stress management? Going outside and playing with our friends. Because the reality is you were present. You were so fully engaged in that activity, in that game, that you weren't worried about school, things, friends, social media likes, all that kind of stuff. Our kids don't do that no more. What is our kids' release? Think about it. What are your kids getting the release that they used to get by playing outside? The sticks, balls, all those kind of things. It doesn't exist. And even sports nowadays have become so competitive, and you got to get a scholarship. So now you got to do this, and a sport went from recreational activity to now I got to be full-time job almost to get me to a level that I can get a scholarship.
Right.
Kids are missing out.
Unless you want to take a ride, then you can.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Any other questions or comments?
I would say thank you because I think this was a great start as a male, as a person that is, I would say, under stress here and there. But my point is, I really appreciate this in more ways than one. From the start, in terms of stress management, in terms of testosterone levels, in terms of working optimally. And thank you very much. I think you did a great presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When you said about dangling the carrot in front of the employee, are you talking about commission-based?
Not necessarily commission-based. What I mean by that is it's financial incentives. Usually you have bonus structures, you have things like that. So imagine you have a bonus, right? Most people, if you hit an X mark, you're going to get a hefty bonus. A lot of commission environments are built that way because it's safe for a company. They know that if you hit that number, I'm going to get my profit and I don't have to, I'm not going to be losing money. If it's a salary job, then they're taking a risk. Your output may not be high enough to deliver that. So what happens then? You're going to work extra hours because it's naturally going to force you to do that because you're going to be sitting there going, okay, I'm close, so now I'm going to put 10 hours. And then before you know it, you became a 50-hour standard. Before you know that, now you're at a 60-hour standard. But statistics say that after 50 hours, actually between 50 and 55 is kind of that sweet spot, you can't go over it. Going over 55 hours, you lose productivity compared to if you were at 50 hours. By putting in more, you're getting less. So it's not just the commission, it's constantly using money as a reward, right? It's having them, if you get fear, promotions, chasing that. And the other part is the stick, right? It's the stick and the carrot. Fear or pleasure. Chase money or be afraid to get fired. That's the old school motivation. We say that we don't do that anymore, but we absolutely do. Cool? All right, guys. Oh, one more.
One last question. So I read this study once from the UK psychologist, and he made this. He had a study which showed that if you say sleep for 6 hours at night, and then during the day you have like 2 blocks of 1 hour naps, you can be more effective. And during the study, he showed that if you go to work at 9 o'clock, right, and if you go into traffic, you get like psychologically, you get mentally tired when you go to work. So the first couple of hours you can be productive, but let's say the first 3 hours, then the 4th hour you're less productive. So he said it's more advisable for you to take a nap during that less productive hour, and then after that you realize that you mentally become more efficient at the task you do after the 4th, 5th, and 6th hour.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. What there is, and this is one of the things I do with organizations, we can go in and we can schedule your schedule as an employee based on your circadian sleep pattern, based on your stress response. We can do a 4-point saliva test and basically see what normal graph looks like and then what yours look like, right? Say you have important meetings, but you're down at that point. We either A, need to shift meetings, or B, fix your stress response to bring you up at that point. But to your point, there's a thing called nappuccinos. That's a new thing. And what it is you basically, it's a corporate America thing, but you drink a cup of coffee and then you take a nap. I know it doesn't make sense, right? But caffeine actually takes 25 minutes to kick into your bloodstream until you start feeling the effects. Nap time, here's what's important, guys. Your nap is supposed to be 20 minutes or less. Because once you go over 20 minutes, you get into deep REM sleep and stuff like that. That'll make you groggy after the nap. But what you're talking about, that 20 minutes will buy you 3 hours. That 20-minute nap or meditation, because it does the same thing. You're disengaging from your activity, you're taking a break. What can be a form of meditation? Walking outside. Going taking a 20-minute walk outside. When I work with organizations, I say, okay, do you have to meet in front of a computer? Why can't you do a one-on-one and go take a walk in the park? Why, how much more productive would that be for both of you? You get a break, your employee gets a break, you guys hang out. This is also, to that same point, hanging out with your friends and talking about non-work related activities. So lunchtime meetings where you get away off site for a little bit and you're buying your productivity. By that half-hour break, you're getting so much more in the back half of your day than that half hour cost you. So that's a great point.
Good point. Good discussion.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Jeff, let's get you up.
Guys, if you want to grab some coffee, there's some